Hey dudes and dudettes, are you looking for a killer way to spend your day, whether you're on your own or with your friends? From exploring a local thrift store, creating some timeless crafts, to exploring a local skate park with some pretty radical history. Stick around and take a totally tubular trip back in time to one of the most gnarly decades in human history. Don't be an airhead, join us for this special, the Vintage Milwaukee, an 80s way to spend the day.
This should be played at high volume. Preferably in a residential area.
From timeless wares like mom jeans and crop tops to catchphrases like yikes and cowabunga, the 80s has become huge in culture yet again, inspiring shows like Stranger Things and artists like Dua Lipa. Yet as often as parents might make the joke, I was wearing that at your age, do we really realize how often trends get recycled? What's up? I'm your host, Licht, and come along with me as I take a trip around Milwaukee, hitting up killer locations that really put an emphasis on experiencing the culture of the 80s, as well as putting a definition to some of the trends that we see yet again today. Let's hit the road with our first stop. I visited a local thrift store to see where you can get the most gnarly attire to fit the retro vibe, and also to get the opportunity to compare fashion trends from present to past, reminding us that even though the years were different, we may have more in common with the past than we thought. With many of the subcultures we dress for today finding their footing in the 80s, go to any old thrift shop and there's no doubt you'll find something that'll fit you and your crew. As a matter of fact, with the changing economy, the U.S. secondhand apparel market grew by 14% in 2024, the strongest annual growth since 2021, according to a report done by ThriftUp. From trendy tees to eccentric earrings, thrift stores are known to carry some exceptional items, with the only exception being that they're secondhand. But that isn't scaring shoppers away. Here to speak about their experience as a thrift shop owner are Michelle Eigenberger and Liz Kessling, co-owners of Bandit MKE, a small shop located on the east side of Milwaukee.
So I've been collecting vintage really since I was in high school. Sort of just a fun thing to do, instead of hanging out at the mall, my friends and I would hang out at the thrift store. And it was just I had a closet full of stuff that was never gonna fit me. And so I kind of progressed into selling at markets and selling at shows. And then I would say COVID summer, Liz and I were just kind of we don't have jobs, we don't have anything to do, and we're maybe we should just start selling vintage in our backyard.
We always went to different vintage shows and things like that. My grandparents, had a lot of antiques. In high school, I wore vintage, and it just was a collecting thing.
The number one question we got from people was, where's your store? And we're like, maybe we should have a store. And then we literally just looked at this one place and signed the lease, and now here we are, 4.5 years later.
We sell a lot of our dresses. We have a large variety, things varying from the 1940s to present day or modern, and they're just a style for everybody.
We're really starting to get into the time period where Y2K is the it vintage, and that blows my mind because that's literally just me in college, really, just wearing, jeans under skirts, and I think about all the stuff that I had, and it's why didn't I hang on to it? And that's the same stuff my mom would tell me, in the 90s when I was trying to wear 70s stuff. It was Michelle, this is rubbish. Why are you wearing this? I wore this. So we see a lot of Y2K. We see a lot of people looking for Y2K. Through the store, we get a lot of denim and jeans because who doesn't have a pair of jeans? And the more worn in, the better. And then obviously t-shirts are just ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Everybody has a t-shirt collection. And there's ones you kind of want to rotate. So honestly, we get people in here from every age, which is probably one of the coolest parts about it. We'll see kids who need to be dropped off because they can't even drive yet. And then we'll see them also come in with their grandmas, which is super cool. And we get a lot of, people, retirees and older folks who are hey, this lived a life and now I want to pass it on.
It's necessary in this day and age. There's enough clothes in the world already. It's destructive to the environment making new clothes. They're boring, they fall apart. Why not go vintage?
As you find yourself looking around the small but unique space, you can't help but find yourself drawn in to the vintage technology and adverts that surround the walls, really helping to inspire that 80s feeling and look you're going for.
I was in interior design before we did this. The look is just like my childhood. My childhood was the 80s and early 90s, so these colors, specifically the neon pink and green, purple and teal, that was on all of our toys, that was in all of our clothes, and it's just kind of throwback to the good times.
So we've got a great story about the mannequin heads that we have behind our counter. We acquired them from another vintage collector right when we started the store. Did a little bit of research, and they're actually Twiggy Star Eye heads from a department store in London called Biba. Was like the go-to place in the 70s for like your mod, your regular clothing, obviously. And Biba is the store where Freddie Mercury met his wife, Mary Austin. So it's kind of cool to have that little piece of history from, across the pond, just in our little vintage shop.
We also decided to ask our fashion experts what they'd recommend for a classic 80s look.
Honestly, I would probably go for a dress. So when we're looking for a femme look, I feel like you can really nail it with the right cut and the right kind of style, like a little off the shoulder moment, or like a basque waist where it kind of comes to a point in the middle.
Stonewashed jeans, windbreakers, anything neon colors, early 90s, late 80s sort of things. A good multicolored pattern sweater is a nice 80s look.
Thrift stores are a reflection of the trends that go in and out of style in a city. They're unique locations that reflect a personality that you won't find anywhere else. So the next time you decide to go shopping, don't rule out that secondhand shop. You never know what gnarly threads await you inside. Now that you look the part, killer threads and all, no matter the store, shop, or mall, let's add some handmade touches to your fit. Friendship bracelets became a fad in the 80s, so much so that by the end of the decade, Saved by the Bell parodied the trend, featuring an episode where the main characters made a business selling friendship bracelets outside of school. Now let's go to the craft corner and get those hands busy making a friendship bracelet so colorful, you won't have to worry about losing your bestie at the mall. Here in the craft corner, I'll be showing you how to go about making your friendship bracelets. Now grab a friend or two and let's get started. All you're gonna need for this is thread to make the bracelets, scissors to cut the string, tape to stick the working bracelet to a hard surface, and said hard surface so that it's easier to tie those knots. So let's hop to it. Since I will be teaching you how to braid a friendship bracelet first, I'm going to pick 3 colors. You will too. Grab 2 strings for each color that you choose. I'm going to pick red and pink and orange for these. Once you have all 6 of your strings together, you're going to line them up, get them nice and snug together, and you're going to tie them around your finger. Make sure you get all 6 of those strings through a loop that you make to tie your first knot. And make sure you leave space above the top of your knot for threads you'll need to tie to the end of your bracelet at the end of making it. You're gonna tape it down, keep it nice and secure on the table, and then you're going to separate your threads by color. So you'll have 2 red, or whatever color, on the left, 2 in the middle, and 2 on the right. To start, you're going to grab your 2 strings on the left, and you're going to move them to the middle. Next, you're gonna grab your 2 strings on the right, and you're gonna move those to the middle. Then you'll grab your 2 strings on the left, and move those to the middle. Then you'll grab your 2 strings on the right and move those to the middle. Are you seeing a pattern here? The longer you do this, the beautiful and more lengthy your bracelet will become. And eventually, you'll have something that you can stick right on your bestie's wrist. Now, when you've made a bracelet that is longer than this, you are going to finish it off by tying the exact same knot that you tied at the start of making this bracelet, getting all 6 of those strings through your knot here. There you go, take your time with it. And you might have a lot of leftover string, but what you're gonna do is grab your trusty pair of scissors and cut off the excess string so that the length matches the length at the threads at the top. And once you are done with that, you will have your very own friendship bracelet. Oh, this is just the demo version. What it will actually look like is something a lot more like this. Beautiful and braided and ready to put on all of your friends' wrists. Now, once you've mastered that, there are a million other ways to make friendship bracelets, so I'm gonna teach you another way, which is knotting. For this, This is a very similar setup to the braid, although you can use any number of colors and any number of strings. But for the sake of showing you this, I'm going to show you with 2 colors and 2 strings of each color. So we have a lovely magenta and a beautiful deep purple here. Just like the braided bracelet, we're going to get all of our strings together, all 4 of them this time. We're going to tie them into a knot around my finger here. Once that is done, make sure you leave excess at the top as well. Tape that bad boy back down into place so that it's nice and secure. And then you're also going to separate your strings by color. But making a knotted bracelet is more like a dance. See, there will be one color that stays straight. This is the follow. And this is the lead. Now the lead loves making the number 4. So what you do is once you make a 4 with the lead, you grab a string, pull it through that loop up and to the left, and there you go. The lead, who loves the number 4, is the color that appears on your bracelet. So if you want to keep making magenta, you want to have a very magenta bracelet, keep pulling through with magenta as the lead. But if you're getting sick of that, switch it up. Time to change partners. The lead is now the purple. The follow is going to be the magenta, who will stay still. So take your lead, make another 4, grab that tail end and bring it through that loop, up and to the left, and a knot is made. And you can repeat this in any type of pattern you want. What's nice about these knotted bracelets is that you don't have to stick to the uniformity of the braided bracelets, but once you finish with this, it's just like it was at the beginning. You grab that string and tie it on through to make another knot. Beautiful. And hopefully you do more than I made, unless your friend's wrist is the size of a baby's toe. You will have a friendship bracelet. Although, once it's finished, it will look something more like this if you use 3 colors here. Nice and beautiful. And that is going to wrap it up for this craft corner. Now that you've discovered a new way to add some color to you and your friends' fits, go out there and make your own. Come up with your own bracelet patterns too, once these get too boring for you. And speaking of never too boring, skateboarding. It's been around in the public eye since the 70s, though it didn't really hit the mainstream until the 80s with the help of magazines. It was during this decade that it started to become a lifestyle with the help of people like Tony Hawk. We hold a piece of that history here in Greenfield, where our final stop is the totally tubular skate park, the Turf. The Turf, from featuring Tony Hawk in its heyday, has had many rough patches since. It closed twice before in the 80s and 90s before it opened up yet again this past summer to tears and excitement from the skating community. Come along with me as I interview Pete and Bob, seasoned Turf veterans who share their stories about this historic location. Driving south out of Milwaukee near the off-ramps, you may have noticed a rather interesting sign. And no, it's not an ad for a new evening show, restaurant, or store. As a matter of fact, it's the location for a new old skate park in Milwaukee, the Turf in Greenfield. This skate park has been around since the 70s, opening and closing following interest in the skating fad.
Coming here for the first time, like we didn't ride or anything, we just kind of looked it over, and it was like, you just like, as a little kid, it's still like that, where you're like, heart gets going and you got butterflies and you're like, oh my God. There was music playing, I remember it was like the Cars, Candy-O, fluorescent, like Glow-Tech pads, Powell Peralta, big cubic wheels. The whole thing was just so overwhelming as a kid. It was immediate hook. And from there, I would just pester my mom like every weekend to, you know, bring me out here, and slowly but surely, you know, I figured it out, made friends on this side of town at the skate park, like some of the best friends of my life. You know, we're still friends 40-some years later.
With the park catching attention from people all over, it was a surprise when the park closed its doors.
When we closed in '83, we tried to do everything we could to stay open. Jerry took on every job possible to try to make money, keep us going. That was heartbreak.
And a comfort when it reopened again.
But in '87, I was living out in Madison, working out there, and I got a letter in the mail, a clipping from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, some chicken scratch handwriting on it that said, "Thought you'd like to see this." And it was a picture of somebody doing a frontside grind in the face pool in the triple pool. and no return address, so I had no idea who it was. That was Thursday night. Friday night, I drove back. The park had reopened. Everybody that had, kind of all scattered to the wind in '83 when it closed was all back here. All the guys that I grew up with skating that had all either headed to California or wherever were all back here. That was huge.
Like the real powerful moments were when it reopened in the 80s, because we had maintained contact with the former owner Jerry and his brother Ray, and they let us know, like, hey, we're opening the park. And it was a core group of us, and I got a call from my buddy Weeze, and he's like, hey man, they're opening the park again. And I'm like, okay, and I came back, I got a job working the check-in, and we didn't leave like the turf mile area for over a year. This was our life.
As the effort brought many people home, it also created a strong sense of community yet again.
The city, when the mayor actually had gone through and reached out to Grindline and had them come in just to give a feasibility study whether this would be something that was possible. They had a meeting down at Pulaski High School, and that's kind of when I got involved. And then after that, every meeting that they had, came in to talk about, what were the plans, what are we going to be able to do, what won't we be able to do.
I was part of the Turf Council where the mayor had, I don't know, maybe 15 of us or so. They had meetings for years coming up. Before they even had, the DOT had even passed the land over to the city of Greenfield. Yeah, it was a long, tedious time of meetings and promises and, like figuring things out. Once Grindline was involved, it happened pretty fast.
The mayor of Greenfield just absolutely went to bat forever and repeatedly to make it happen. And then everybody, like I said, everybody else that just tirelessly, the Save the Turf Foundation, fundraising efforts, people banging on doors, you name it, it happened, and we're here.
And the whole, bringing it back last summer and spring, it's been so emotional for all of us, like wildest fantasy come true. It's just, it's the first time it's ever been done, really, like bringing back a skate park. Here, when the excavators were digging it out, and I had tears in my eyes. It was just unbelievable.
This community of skaters has been through thick and thin, and advice they have for new skaters:
it takes time, and don't give up. That's all. It's super fun. Get aboard and go.
The group of people in the background that started initially trying to bring the park back, just the same example of work hard enough, work long enough, and you can make it happen.
Seeing all of that hard work pay off in a new and improved skate park really is commendable. Talk about an unfoldable community. And speaking of unfoldable, to pass the time without modern technology, lots of kids turned to folding up pieces of homework or notebook paper to pass the time in the 80s. What were they making? Cootie catchers, of course, otherwise known as fortune tellers. For those who couldn't afford the magic 8-ball of the time, this was king. Let's head back to the craft corner and revisit this classic origami craft. This time in the craft corner, I'm going to show you how to make a fortune teller. Now, all you're going to need for this is a piece of paper. Any piece of paper will do, a writing utensil like a marker or a pencil, and a hard surface to fold on, and some scissors if your paper isn't already square. Now let's hop to it. Start off with, let's grab our paper, and let's take one corner and fold it up to meet the top of the other side of the paper. Now take your time getting these nice and smooth, nice and crisp fold lines here are exactly what we want. You'll see we have this rectangle here. We don't need that actually. We're gonna cut that right off. We're not gonna use it anymore, so instead of wasting it, you could make another craft, make a bookmark or something. So if you're not much for reading, maybe give it to your mother. Lord knows you should call her. All right, there we go. Now that we have one crease here, we are going to take the corner where the crease already is and fold it up to the opposite end. Once that is nice and smooth, we will open this paper back up and we will see an X right here. It's exactly what we want. We want more of these triangles, so let's take our corners and fold them into the middle. And that way, this will create 4 more triangles. And you'll see here after I fold this, there might be a little slit in between where I made my folds. That's a-okay, as long as the corners are as close to the middle as possible. Those slits there aren't that important. Don't worry about that. Just try your best not to overlap any of these top points when you're making your folds. And when you finish with that, you will have a nice mini square. You're gonna flip that over, and on this side, you're gonna do the exact same thing. You're gonna fold all of your corners in to the middle. Take your time making them nice and smooth, like I was saying. And it's after this step where you can finally start to get nice and creative. After you fold number 3 and number 4. So you will have an even smaller square right here. Get those folds down. What you're gonna do is flip your paper back over, and if you have colors, if you have colored pencils, markers, what you're gonna do is color a different color on top of each square here. Now, if you only have one utensil, that is too bad for you. You're just gonna write numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 on here. But since I am tubular and radical, I've got colors, and I'm gonna make this a gnarly craft. And hopefully you spent a little more time making this beautiful, but just to show you what to do, I'm getting these colors on here. Now that you've got your colors, you're gonna flip your paper back over to these flaps, and this is where you get to keep being creative. With either a marker or a different pencil, you are going to start to label these flaps up here. You can see a little slit here, and even though it looks like there's only 4, the slit is what splits them up into 8. You are going to number each triangle here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Once you're done with that, you will fold your flaps up, and this is where you're gonna write all 8 of your fortunes. Now you can make your fortunes have good luck, bad luck, phenomenal luck. You go to the pit. Oh, that's a cowabummer. But oh, what's this? $1 million jackpot, baby. That's radical. Now, I'm not gonna make the other 6 fortunes, that's up to you, because if I made them, you would die laughing, and you need to be alive to finish up this tutorial. So, we're gonna continue on by folding up everywhere that you can possibly fold on your fortune teller. Fold vertically and horizontally. Really get all of that movement going so that your fortune teller is nice and mobile by the time it comes to use it. Once you think you've got some good enough creases there, look at all of the colors that you've got here. You can see that there's a diagonal crease on top of each of them. You're gonna try to pronounce those because this is where your fingers are going to go. Once you've pronounced all of your creases enough, you're gonna stick your fingers in, and voila, your very own fortune teller. You can pass the time in the back of class by playing it with your friends. That's gonna wrap it up for this craft corner, so let's head back to home base so we can finish this up. Now, in reality, what did these have in mind other than the fact that they all share a passion in representing the culture of the 80s and are great spots to check out on your 80s themed day? Well, they also represent a pattern in how trends move. Fashion already moves in a 20 to 30 year cycle, meaning that trends that defined a generation when they were children inevitably return when that generation is at the helm of culture. We are remixing it and making it our own, but it's also important to learn where these ideas came from, not only as a form of respect, but to learn from it and not repeat those fashion disasters of shoulder pads on everything, please. The 80s were perhaps a simpler time, so there's no surprise that during times of uncertainty, we want to be closer to what is simpler or more comfortable to us. But that doesn't mean we have to become our parents again. Take on old trends in a way that is uniquely you. I've been your gnarly host, Licht, and thank you for coming along on this trip through the 80s. Stay bad to the bone and hang 10.